The room was filled with a quiet tension, like the air had thickened with each passing second. My father stood there, facing me, eyes hard, his words clipped. "You'll sign the deed. It's the right thing to do." I stood, frozen. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. I didn't want to back down, but the weight of everyone's gaze made it harder to breathe. "No," I said, my voice barely a whisper at first, but then it came out stronger, defiant. "I'm not signing this." The silence that followed was deafening. My father's hand shot up faster than I could react. The slap hit so hard that I didn't even feel the pain right away, just the rush of blood. My earring flew across the marble floor, the sound of it landing a sharp reminder of what just happened. I didn't move. I didn't cry. I just stood there, the weight of what had just occurred pressing down on me. I stumbled back slightly, and before anyone could say anything, I pulled out my phone and dialed the number I had known since I was a child. "Daniel," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It happened. Iris. Stay calm. I'm triggering the emergency filing we prepared. I'll meet you there with the injunction." I didn't reply, just hung up and stayed there, the sting on my cheek and the cold, empty silence in the room louder than any words could be. I sat down near the hotel's grand entrance, feeling the blood on my lip mix with the taste of something colder. My hands shook, but I stayed still, knowing I couldn't let them see me break. A few moments later, a security guard approached. He seemed almost apologetic, a little unsure about how to deal with what had just happened. "Miss, I've called our on-site medic and I'm required to ask if you want us to notify NYPD," he said, his tone respectful but firm. I shook my head, wiping my lip again. "No police yet. My attorney is on his way." He nodded and took a step back, but his gaze lingered for a moment before he left without another word. It wasn't about the law anymore. It wasn't even about the apartment. Something bigger was happening. Something I couldn't even explain yet. The quiet aftermath of the slap. The way the room emptied. The way people just walked out. Those were the moments I was going to have to carry with me. I didn't feel relieved. I felt exposed. And I wasn't sure which was worse. The call came on a Tuesday evening while I was eating dinner out of the container it came in. My phone lit up with Winifred Langford. She never called at night unless it mattered. "Iris," she said, steady as ever. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen all the way through." I set the fork down. "I'm listening. I've updated my will." There was a pause. Not dramatic, deliberate. "The condominium in Battery Park City is being left to you." I didn't answer right away. "Why me?" The words came out softer than I expected. "I'm not asking because I don't want it. I just don't understand." "Because you show up," she replied. "You don't keep score. You don't bring an audience." I pictured her kitchen table, the yellow mug with the crack in the handle. Dad isn't going to take this well. She gave a small, tired breath. "Your father believes love is a transaction." "I don't." "Have you told them yet?" "No, and I won't." A pause. "Daniel Kessler handled everything. It's notarized, filed, clean." I leaned back in my chair. "They'll say you're not thinking clearly. I've spent my life teaching the law. Iris. I know what clarity looks like." Her voice softened. "They may try to convince you to give it back. I won't." "I know." Another pause. Heavier this time. "If anything becomes public, you call Daniel. Promise me. I promise." She hesitated. "Just a beat. Whatever happens next, I want you to remember this wasn't a mistake. I won't forget." When the line went quiet, I stayed where I was, phone still in my hand, understanding for the first time that something had already begun moving, whether any of us were ready or not. The meeting happened in my parents' living room, late afternoon. curtains half drawn like it was already over. My father sat in his usual chair, my mother on the sofa, legs crossed, Blair perched at the end, twisting a ring she already wore like practice. "This isn't an attack," Celeste began. "It's concern." Harrison folded his hands. "Your grandmother's decisions have been unusual." I stayed standing. She was clear with me. Blair's voice broke in, soft and breathy. "It just doesn't feel fair. One person getting everything." "It isn't everything," I said. "It's one property." Celeste tilted her head. "Battery Park City isn't nothing. Iris." "And there are questions about Winifred's cognitive impairment." The phrase landed carefully, like it had been rehearsed. "I see her every week," I said. "She knows exactly what she's doing." Harrison's mouth tightened. "You don't have the full picture." "What picture?" "The responsible thing," he continued, "would be for you to decline the inheritance, or sell it and divide the proceeds equally." Silence stretched. I could hear the clock on the wall. Blair sniffed, wiping under her eye. "I'm not doing that." Celeste exhaled slowly. "Think about what you're choosing. I have." Harrison stood. "Then understand this. Choices come with consequences." Blair looked up at me, eyes bright. "You're really going to do this to us. I'm not doing anything to you," I said. "I'm just not giving something away because it makes you uncomfortable." No one argued after that. They didn't need to. The decision had already been made, just not by me. It started small. A family dinner that happened without me. A birthday text that never came. I noticed when my mother's number stopped lighting up my phone. Then when my father's did the same. Blair's engagement showed up on my screen one morning, bright and filtered. Comments from cousins I hadn't heard from in years. Someone tagged my parents. No one tagged me. When I called Celeste, it went to voicemail. Later, a text appeared. "We assumed you'd want space." I didn't answer. At work, things stayed normal. Clients talked about tile samples and timelines. I nodded, took notes, kept my voice steady. It was easier there. At least everyone knew why they were asking something of me. Winifred stopped answering her phone around the same time. Not all at once. Just missed calls, shorter replies, then nothing. When I asked my mother, she replied quickly for once. "She's resting." The doctors advised limiting contact. Contact with who? I typed, then erased it. Weeks later, I visited the assisted living facility Celeste chose. The lobby smelled like lemon cleaner and something sweet. A woman at the desk checked her screen and smiled politely. "I'm sorry," she said. "Visitors need prior approval. My name is Iris Langford." She nodded. "Yes, you're on the list." I should have felt relieved. Instead, something settled low in my stomach. Being allowed in didn't feel like welcome. It felt like permission. When I finally got through to the nurse at Brookhaven, she didn't even try to mask the hesitation in her voice. "We were instructed not to let anyone visit without prior approval," she said. "I'm afraid it's against policy." "I'm her granddaughter," I said, my voice already tight. "Why is she unreachable?" The line went quiet for a moment. Then she spoke carefully. "Mrs. Langford is not well. We have to follow the doctor's orders." I didn't push. I knew how Celeste operated. It was always wrapped up in justification. That was the game now. One more thing I couldn't do anything about. I hung up, but I didn't leave. Instead, I found a bench near the entrance and sat there. I didn't know what I was waiting for. My mind kept circling back to that moment in the ballroom. My father's hand raised, my mother's eyes steady beside him, Blair's perfect little smile as if nothing was wrong. Hours passed. I checked my phone. A text from Celeste. "We'll talk soon." No, we wouldn't. When I got the courage to try again the next day, I was more prepared. The receptionist at Brookhaven didn't even flinch this time when she told me. "I'm afraid Mrs. Langford is not receiving visitors today. She's been saying that for weeks." I replied, trying to keep my tone even. If you could just tell me where she is. I'll leave. I don't need to stay. The woman looked down at her screen, typing something. I felt a sudden rush of frustration. I'm not going to make a scene, I said, the words almost sounding foreign to me. But it was true. No matter how many times Celeste shut me out, I wouldn't lose my cool. She glanced up. I'm sorry, Miss Langford, but Mrs. Langford requested to be moved to another unit. I can't share more than that. A chill crept up my spine. Something wasn't right. I couldn't put my finger on it yet. But I would. I watched them go one by one, moving toward the doors with a kind of polite urgency, like they were trying to make their exit before anyone noticed. It wasn't loud. There were no gasps or dramatic words, just the slow shifting of chairs, the shuffle of shoes, the way the room emptied out. Piece by piece. By the time Winifred walked in, the space had already thinned, but I could feel the weight of it. The air felt lighter, but also somehow colder. Daniel entered first. His steps were firm, his eyes scanning the room, his usual coolness in place. Then came Winifred, leaning on a cane but standing tall, with 2 officers flanking her. They weren't there to arrest anyone, just to make sure she wasn't stopped. The sight of her, so composed, so steady, hit me harder than anything that had happened so far. Daniel turned to the room and spoke in a voice that carried over the hushed crowd. The judge signed the order to show cause. Your mother's power of attorney is suspended effective immediately. The words hung in the air like the last thing anyone expected to hear. I watched as the faces in the room flickered between disbelief and confusion, and something else, guilt, maybe. And then, for the first time that night, someone in the room finally spoke out. It wasn't Harrison or Celeste or even Blair. It was one of the guests, a lawyer, whispering something to his neighbor. The truth had arrived. Everything felt like it was happening at once. The whispers, the eyes on us, the growing realization that things were no longer in anyone's control. Harrison's face had gone completely pale when Winifred spoke. It was like all the power he thought he had over me, over the room, over the situation had slipped through his fingers, and he didn't know how to get it back. I didn't want it to come to this, Winifred said, her voice steady and unwavering, but I won't let my family be manipulated any longer. Her words cut through the tension like a knife. I didn't need to look around to know how the rest of the room was reacting. The silence, thick and palpable, told me everything. Harrison, still silent, looked at his hands. They trembled just a little, just enough for me to notice. Celeste stood next to him, her eyes darting around, trying to find an escape that wouldn't come. And then Winifred said it. This property belongs to Iris. It always has. The room seemed to swallow the words, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in the right place, standing on the right side of this fight. It wasn't about the penthouse. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about having the truth finally on my side. And that was all I needed. The morning after, I sat at my desk, the stillness of the room almost suffocating. My phone had been buzzing all night, but I hadn't answered. It wasn't until after I finished my coffee that I picked it up. The first message was from Daniel. The DA's office filed charges against Celeste. I set the phone down and leaned back in my chair. I wasn't surprised. Not really. But the words still felt heavy. There was something about them that made the whole situation feel more final. It wasn't just about the penthouse or the slap anymore. This was real. I looked out the window. The skyline outside seemed to be the same as it always was, but everything inside me had shifted. I wasn't the person I was before all this started. I still couldn't believe how fast things had unraveled, the power I thought I had to protect myself, The silence I kept to avoid conflict, it had all been hollow. But now I had a choice, a real one. And when I stood up to face the consequences, I realized I wasn't afraid of them anymore. I wasn't losing anymore.